Well, my friends. So we have a BNR coming out on the afternoon when I have the day off, which means that we can actually sit together and do a first takes of sorts. And this one's a doozy. There are impacts to every single format, very relevant in every single format. Let's get into this.
A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando.
Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to the channel for an, I was going to say ad hoc. That's actually not entirely true because we knew this BNR was coming. We didn't know what time, but we knew it was coming. But I will say this one is a lot more impactful than I expected it to be. It impacts, as I mentioned, every single format. So you know the way I do these when we're going through articles. I don't read the article to you because I respect your intelligence and your ability to do so. Most of you also, by the time you're watching this, are at least aware of the Cliff's Notes version. So we'll just go through, and I'm actually going to do it in a different order too. I want to talk CC first, then I want to talk Commoner. The reason for that is obviously the Commoner battle hardened, whether you're going to be there or not. If you're into the Commoner format, this is the biggest thing that's happened to Commoner in the history of the game, right? So we're like, 2 weeks out from that, less than 2 weeks out from that. So we're going to talk Commoner, then talk Blitz. So we got Skirmish 10 coming, and then we will finish with Living Legend, right? So it's really just a priority of what I see the impacts to be. Hey, so here we go. The scheduled BNR announcement. Now, this was written by James, okay? So he clearly was working on this probably concurrently with my interview that we did last week. But big stuff here. So Classic Instructed. The following changes are effective now. High Octane is banned, and CYB Blue is banned. So High Octane being banned isn't really a surprise. I personally think it's a bit of a bummer, but I get it. I get it in context of how they were approaching it, right? I still think that the card probably was, it was kind of an inherent, anyway, if it's design limiting, it's design limiting, so be it. I just I have a personal issue with, it's like, well, we printed all this new stuff and now High Octane's busted. It's like, well, maybe you should have evaluated the new stuff, but if it's design limiting, it's design limiting. So fair enough, right? Now, the real loser on this is probably Max, I think, with trying to do the mech thing and go mech. James makes a really, really like blatant and true argument in here talking about weapons. The weapon attack, he's basically putting a weapon attack equivalent to a card draw in terms of value. And it's actually a really intelligent way to look at it. I'm going to go on a little bit of an aside here, right? But I've talked about before how I believe that Flesh and Blood's core mechanics favor fatigue, right? And inherently, one of the primary vehicles by which that happens is weapons, because weapons throw damage that are non-consumable, right? Now, I believe that you have to have that, otherwise things probably might be worse in the end. But if you think about something like CYB, right? And yes, Enigma makes hers differently, but if she had a weapon, it would be functionally the same, right? Where it's not just that weapon doesn't take damage for you, I get it. But as long as you can keep throwing something on the table to create damage, doesn't cost you net anything. Kadachi's, Anothos, Titan's Fist, Winter's Wail back in the day, you get it, right? So I think he has a really fair argument there. That said, I still think that, the multi-pit, what defined much of the mech class were two things. It was boost and the fact that they had a weapon that was not once per turn action. Right. So you look at a card like High Octane, which is fundamentally supposed to make that happen, where you can go pistol, something like that. Right. And I think that was a fair argument. Now, sure, things have evolved and they need to go. So fair enough. Next, let's go talk CYB. So he has a whole long discussion here about what is a control deck. It is interesting here. So James talks a bit about what he thinks defines a control deck in this game. And he says, right here, I will highlight it and hopefully that translates. Count Your Blessings Enigma is what a control deck looks like in Flesh and Blood. That's a big statement, right? Especially for what it means for the future. And in fact, if you're someone who is, there's a lot of us who are kind of on the fence right now about, man, what does the future of Fab look like? I'm not necessarily enjoying it now. What does the future look like? I think this should ring true to you in a lot of ways. I know it impacts me. The statement from the designer of the game that CYB Enigma is what a control deck should look like. I mean, we've had a lot of, I would argue like Oldhim was a control. I mean, fatigue and control, I get it. They're transposable in this game. Completely get it, right? But Oldhim seemed, while oppressive in his own way, seemed different. So the fact that CYB Enigma is what a control deck looks like in Flesh and Blood implies that we will see many things like that in the future. That's how I interpret that. So that is a very interesting development, I should say, that we had in this. That's probably the biggest thing to come out of this article, if I'm being honest with you, right? Obviously, there's the game impacts, but in terms of what we learned from this article, this is pretty big, right? That CYB Enigma is what a control deck looks like in the game. Kind of a big deal. He also says here, fundamentally, I don't think Count Your Blessings is a problem, okay? So that, kind of goes, I mean, there's silver bullets for it, and it goes a lot to another discussion about, what does silver bullet culture look like in Flesh and Blood? What do we want it to be? Is that the future? I would have to say that with those two statements combined, the answer is probably yes to both, right? That we will see more silver bullet culture in the future, and that we're okay with that. I mean, I think that's the answer. So, the net here, obviously CYB blue is banned. This one actually makes a lot of sense. It's the highest impact, right? Because of what, it's perfectly, the CYB arc is perfectly on curve with each other, except for the plus X part. The plus X part is independent of curve. So if you think about the card that actually gets you the most bang for your buck, it's blue, right? It is. So makes a lot of sense there. They really cap. I don't think that without, what I think is interesting here is I think that without all 9 CYBs, the card as a whole is probably not super playable, right? So I think banning CYB blue functionally probably banned them all. It's not. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably right. Because CYB, CYB red coming in at the end now is only worth maybe 9. No, it'd be 8. Sorry, it'd be 8 because it counts X in when it's not in yet. So it'd be 8, right? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. So I don't know. We'll see if it's still worth playing. People will keep trying, but that is very interesting. So yeah, the impact of that will be, we'll see what Enigma will do. So let's go down now and talk Commoner. I see here, following changes are effective November 11th, Aether Ironweave is banned. So they speak a lot to Chane. Chane's pretty strong right now on 2 different builds. Aether Ironweave is a significant enabler to this, and it hits all the Runeblades. And I mean, it makes sense. Like the card defends 1 and creates you 2 resources, which you often then turn into a Rosetta Swing. I think this is actually a pretty elegant change because there's a lot of ways to backfill either the resource or the defend 1. I mean, plenty of ways. You have anything ranging from Blossom of Spring to, was it the new Blood Carapace or whatever, Bloodtorn Carapace, I think it is. I think that's true. I'm actually really happy. I was actually considering buying myself an Aether Ironweave Cold Foil because it's used in every deck. So bullet dodged. Thanks, James, for saving me money. So good there. I think this is pretty elegant. There had been some other options tossed around on Deadwood Dirge, which I think would be fair. But this is the only change coming out. I don't think this changes all that much. And I think that's probably why it's perfect. I'm pretty on board with this one. This one seems to make a lot of sense to me from Commoner standpoint. I don't think that you're not going to see chains. I don't think you're not going to see Runeblades at Commoner because of this, right? And it really is, this is a pretty small, this is like a pretty surgical scalpel type thing. So we'll see how it lands. I don't think it changes all that much because a lot of times you're actually not using Aether Ironweave for 2 resources. Most of the time you're using it for 1. And it's like, that's like a pretty true statement in the commoner format. You really don't need the 2, you need the 1. So, I think the one who hurts the most is probably Aurora, actually, because a lot of times you could use the 2 to make an embodiment. So I think that, again, you got to look at top tier. Aurora's not top tier. Chane is. I think it's pretty good. All right, let's go now to Blitz. There's actually quite a bit going on here in Blitz. We already knew about Zen already, so they changed that where Zen is now legal again, for however you feel about that, right? Plus, minus, whatever it is, we know it's realistic. Another part here is that Belittle is banned. So Belittle is straight up, this is specifically blue Belittle, because Zen was playing blue Belittle. He might have been playing red too in some decks, but it was mostly blue Belittle, because then you've played a blue, right? I mean, that's what Zen wants to do. So this makes a lot of sense. It's not really they didn't just ban blue Belittle, to be clear. They just killed Belittle. But I think it makes a lot of sense. So also, just let's put this in context, right? So Zen had nothing done with him, nothing done to him going into Skirmish 9. Coming out of Skirmish 9, and then obviously the CC stuff, we saw what happens with Bonds. We saw, it was just Bonds there. Well, and then Art of War, obviously, right? So yeah, Bonds and Art of War. Art of War wasn't really a Zen thing, to be clear, but impacted him for sure. So he took a major hit coming out of Skirmish 9 for that, and then we're bringing him back, and before we bring him back, we actually took another thing off the table. Pretty interesting, right? Zen's pretty good. Zen is that is an impactful statement too. This just seeing it in print. Zen is no longer a living legend set. Again, this is not a surprise. We knew this was coming. It's just that statement. Zen is no longer living legend status. Big deal. Okay. Now, Belittle, I think, like I already talked about that, makes a lot of sense. So Hadron Collider, right? The why here is because Data Doll is arguably S tier. She's not arguably S tier. She's certainly S tier. The question is, how big is the gap between S tier? She's crazy good right now. Unless you are on a certain handful of decks, fatiguing her is really not an option. And she just goes super hard. So I kind of like the Hadron one here. To be clear, I wasn't expecting this at all. But with all of the toys she got out of the Dash.io deck, she just rocketed to tier S, tier 1, whatever you kids, tier A, whatever you kids want to call them, right? The best deck. I don't know that she's the best deck in the format because Blitz is Blitz, but she's like the top tier deck in the format, right? I don't know that you can say best deck in the format in Blitz, but she's the top deck in the format. How's that? Right? I know that's splitting hairs, but everybody has bad matchups in Blitz, right? So what's neat here is that you can still pounder, you can still boom grenade, you can still do your microprocessors, which is just crazy insane. Like, so good. I think this is good because sometimes those Hadron Colliders come down with a boom grenade, and it's just like, wait, what? Like, because with the new, it's the heavy industry gear and the Teklo Heart, she can chuck like 5 or 6 cards within turn 0. Well, not turn 0 because she'd have to go but you get my point, right? By the time she gets to like her first turn cycle, she could have potentially put like 4 or 5 cards in the drink already just by boosting or using defense or by Teklo Hearting. And like you can very reasonably, because remember, she's not like Dash.io where she's a 1 item per turn off top of deck, right? If she chucks the card, it goes in. So you can get a boom grenade and a hate. So you can 0 for 60 for free, right? Get something in, set up and do another banish then off Teklo Heart. And all of a sudden you're coming in on your second attack of the turn, card number 2. Well, I guess you'd have pitched, but you get my point, right? So your second attack of the turn with like a Collider and a boom grenade. And like sometimes there's just nothing people can do. So I think this one's actually pretty hot. Pounder is only the first per turn. Now it stays for 3 turns, but it's only the first per turn, so you can kind of pre-budget it. But when the Hadron Collider comes in, sometimes you're just like, well, I already fended 7 on the first attack. What am I supposed to do here to stop this boom grenade? So now you're taking 5 or 6 with like another boom grenade on the back. Anyway, this one I think is really smart. So I think it's kind of funny, right? Because I had a whole cool video about the tragedy of Data Doll, which I had a lot of fun with that one, by the way. I'll link it, but it's the tragedy of Data Doll, how when Dash, because Data Doll had finally gotten to be like a pretty like top tier hero. This was into Skirmish 9. It gotten to be pretty top tier, and then because with all the crank stuff, she could pistol shot multiple times, but then Dash, like OG Dash, LL'd, and Data Doll lost the pistol, and well, now she's like, so that's a pretty cool story, right? And now so much so that she's got to take a nerf for it. So anyway, I think this one's good. It's also like a low cost. Is Hadron Colliders a common? I think I have to look. I'll put it up to confirm. I'm pretty certain it's a common, right? So it's low impact. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. All right. Moving into the last is Living Legend. So both these changes seem to make a lot of sense to me. Open the Floodgates is actually like a really scary card. It's a common also. Really scary card with Kano. They speak to just kind of the disgustingness of it. And you know what? There's actually an interesting thing here. Because I think Kano, if you think about Kano himself, and this is true for CC as well, right? I think if you think about Kano and his place in the meta when he does well, it's when he's like the tier 1-5 hero that maybe even like the tier like 2 hero, top tier 2 hero, tier 1-5 hero, whatever. He's the hero that no one's second for, right? So I think this might actually be better for Kano players to not have him be like the stupid deck in the format. Hopefully that statement makes sense, right? But I think that's true. I think the Kano players should be happier being the outlier hero than they should being like the bomb hero, right? And I think that might be true for wizard class in general. Well, explosive wizard class in general, where if you have a bunch of people teching into you, it's probably not super great, but it's like riding the fringe where they're not expecting to just like suddenly take 18 damage or something. I think that feels better for you. So you're probably actually happy for this. I mean, not happy. Does open the floodgates pretty good. Turns out free stuff is good, and then bringing back Starstruck. It's like what, a $2 or $2.50 card. It was like a $20 card at one point. So man, I will tell you, Dusk Till Dawn is slowly creeping up to like be value added again. But anyway, no, this one makes a lot of sense, clearing the way for Starvo and pretty much solidifying the fact that Living Legend format's going to probably stay mostly the same for a long time. Although, hey, you know what, Zen, that's not true because Zen's relatively new. So I take that statement back. Okay, so that's that, right? That's going through it. I'm a little excited, not little. I think I'm tempered excited, right? What's been happening at the local Armory level because of CYB has not been okay. So I'm glad to see this happen. I do think that probably, like because like Ira's coming and there's a pretty decent CYB Ira build. There are pretty decent CYB Ira builds out there. So I don't hate to see this one go away. I do think that banning the blues effectively banning them all. I mean, not from the truest sense, but like in terms of a practical sense, I think that's true. So, but there's no love lost there. CYB to me it's one of these cards that's completely fine at the competitive level when you have more narrow things, you have people that are tighter in terms of their grouping to each other. But what's happening at the Armory level with CYB is not okay. So the fact that, that type of concept is what a control deck should look like is pretty concerning to me for the future of Fab. But hopefully I'm just reading that the wrong way, or maybe I'm extra sensitive today or whatever it might be. The last thing, again, Aether Ironweave with the Impact Commoner, I think is all positive. And again, remember that Commoner, Battle-Hardened Portland Commoner event in, 14 days? Is that right? 13 days. It's going to be awesome. So anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know. Hopefully you've been, letting me know below as we go what your thoughts are. But yeah, it was kind of fun hanging out and doing a first takes of sorts. So thanks for joining me, and go Commando.